Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast, where we discuss all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring.
Welcome back to the Inner Athlete Podcast. We've got something a little bit special today. We're actually going to go through some fitness trends and modalities and pieces of equipment that are used within the fitness industry and specifically the S&C, but we're going to call it overrated, underrated, which is which, and we're going to try and argue which is overrated and which is underrated, give our justifications. It's going to be a fun one, but before we crack into it, how you guys been?
Good, yeah. Won my footy match on the weekend, so in the granny in a couple of days, so excited for that.
Very nice.
Yeah, I started 1 by 20. It's really hard and I'm really sore. Yeah.
Soul crushing.
Yeah, but I'm hoping I get better at it.
Bit different from your singles.
Oh, yeah.
Top
20
singles.
reps. 20 reps, cardio.
Yeah, it's good fun.
How's your boxing?
It's coming along. Yeah, about 4 sessions in. And
Yeah.
enjoying the process of learning.
Still haven't knocked anyone out yet?
No.
Have you been hit yet?
No, not yet.
No? Okay.
No. Eventually I'll
I don't think anyone wants to fight you anyway.
I'll be alright. I have
The other
been,
person won't be alright.
I have been watching Mike Tyson videos though.
Yeah.
His movement is unfreaking believable.
Yeah.
And some of his old school training is absolutely wild and nuts. I was actually listening to his justifications of why he does certain combos and why he ducks and weaves so much.
Yeah.
It's like he's just a constant moving target, but then he's got his right hand loaded all the time.
Yeah.
So it makes him so dangerous.
Yeah. Would you take him on, Dave? If you had some
No,
training?
but I'd pay him to knock me out. That'd be cool. So you've been knocked out by Mike Tyson.
No, I'm talking about, would you take on Trent
Oh,
one-on-one? If you get
Nah,
both had 3 months training camp.
I don't know. Charity match.
Yeah, we should have a charity match.
January 1st, pay-per-view fight. There we go.
All right, let's crack into it. So what's the first one, Dave? What's the first one we're going to argue?
Alright, so the first overrated or underrated of our special edition episode is stretching. So a bit of context as well. So all of these overrated and underrated topics are for athletes. So we're talking about, are these good for athletes or bad for athletes? Trent, stretching.
I personally think they're overrated. Just in general, personally for me, because when I've done all the stretching under the sun, I've experienced little to no change when it comes to changes in muscle length. All I do is lose more tension, and that's probably the last thing you actually want to lose is tension, but then you have to find a way to regain it. But if you look at a lot of amateur sports, all they do is do a lot of stretching in their warm-up, and it's kind of the opposite. You want to be gaining tension, and you want to be really fast twitch in that area rather than lose that tension, that ability to be a lot more reactive and have that quick eccentric loading.
Yeah. I mean, from personal experience, I'd say, overrated as well. Like, I never feel good on a game day or match day from doing a warm-up, but I find I feel better on the days where I actually miss out on the warm-up and don't go through that normal stretching period and I guess a traditional warm-up sort of stuff. So, I mean, in my view, it's pretty overrated.
I'm the opposite. So I actually enjoy stretching. I find it helps me to get into end range positions for joint specific positions. But for athletes, I think if you're squatting or deadlifting and you feel like you're a bit tight somewhere, I think having a short-term stretch will be fine. Things like calves, hip flexors, and lateral hips, like glutes and things like that, I think it's totally fine to stretch that. But I think in terms of a field-based athlete, it's probably not the best because, like Trent said, you do lose a bit of tension. That could be an advantage on the field, but I think in the gym and training, things like that, and you feel like you can benefit from a stretch, I think it's fine.
Would you do it before or after?
Before.
During?
Potentially during.
Yeah.
If you feel better and you lift better.
Yeah, like in terms of like the bodybuilding world, they do stretching like in between sets, which is not a bad thing. But I think in terms of the sporting context, your goal is to be as fast and twitchy as possible. And obviously, you reduce that capacity, and they have tested it as well.
Yeah. And if you are getting tight muscles, maybe figure out why you're getting tight in the first place. Don't need to stretch it out.
Yeah, cool. All right, what's number 2?
Number 2, booty bands.
Matt.
Underrated. I reckon, as a tool for, I mean, if we're talking about for athletic contest, so for cueing and coaching movements, yeah, I think use them. And I think for lack of a better term, I guess activation or getting someone to feel the right muscles you want to be feeling, I think they're sort of like demonized, and you sort of don't want to use them because you're looked at as sort of a, I don't know, social media influencer trying to build a big booty. And not saying that those little kickbacks and whatnot with the booty band's going to build you a big bum, but yeah, I think underrated in the context that they're so demonized that you sort of don't want to, you're shying away from using them more than when you can be.
Yeah, I think, if you're a female influencer, overrated. But I think from an athlete context, it can actually be helpful if you find it helps you. I think a lot of athletes may not feel their glute med, so having a bit of activation, a bit of awareness around the glute med may actually help, especially in gait, landing, things like that.
Yeah, look, for athletic population, underrated. I think they can be used as another tool as well from just strengthening glutes. We use it here, help to strengthen the hip flexors. We use it for dead bug variations, use it for marches as well. I think it's a good tool, but in terms of like developing glutes, completely overrated. Yeah.
So we agree on underrated?
Yeah, and even like in a warm-up sense, I see a lot of guys at footy do I don't know, crab walks, monster walks, whatever it might be. I think that's a much better, like we're talking about stretching just before, if you're doing stuff like that over leg swings and calf pumps or whatnot, you're going to get much more benefit out of that.
Definitely. And you don't have to use it for your booty, you can also use it for hip flexors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also use it for your shoulders as well. We've used it in the shoulder rehab space as
I've
well.
used that. Yeah, I've done it.
You can also use it for bench press cueing as well, to actually get them to, rather than have the weights actually start to come away for dumbbell pressing.
Yeah.
Use it for barbell bench pressing to get them to kind of get some like feedback in the bar, almost like trying to tear the bar apart. I've used it for lat pull downs as well in some contexts when they feel like it's just all forearms. And the idea is for the forearms is actually to be connected with the bar, then your back and your biceps can actually pull the bar down.
And I've also helped it around the ankles for squatting to help them to feel what the ankles are doing in the bottom of the squat.
Yeah, great as a feedback tool. I think it's excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, next one.
Next one is Bosu ball.
Bosu ball.
So what is a Bosu ball, Trent?
Bosu ball is basically, it's like a Swiss ball, but it's basically being cut in half, or if not in by a third, and it's kind of like that crescent shape as well. Where do we see it? We see it in all gyms. People use it for stability work and all that jazz. I think it's overrated, and I really can't see a use in athlete population. We don't even have one here because we just don't find an actual use for it. If we're going to do ankle rehab work, we get them on a balance pad, or we just do like single leg cone pickups or something like that. I just think, I don't see it as an actual tool to be able to be properly utilized here.
Mm-hmm. I'll go similar with the booty bands, underrated. So again, I think again it's just been demonized too far on the other way. I think, say, if you got a kid and you want to teach him how to be able to land from awkward positions, you're getting him jumping off and on the ball. It's just a fun little extra tool that we have. I know we have another topic to touch on later. Like, we've got these little fun, gimmicky sort of balance equipment that we use here. I think it's just another one of those tools that you can be used to get a kid doing jumps and whatnot. To start with,
novel stimulus, really.
Yeah, I'm not saying to do squats on a Bosu ball or whatnot, but if you're doing jumps off and on it, I think it's easy tool, fun way to get them doing plyometrics and an introduction to those sort of movements.
Actually, you can use it for lateral bounding as well.
Yeah.
I'm both sides of the coin, so I can understand both sides of the perspective, but I do see it marketed towards athlete as a instability training, get your balance better, things like that, because people stand on it, or they do push-ups or squats on it on the flat side, and the round side is on the bottom, and things like that. But I think from a jumping perspective, you can do jumps on it, things like that, but why can't you just jump and do spins and turns and things like that? Because probably a bit more specific, but again, adding some variation in there off a Bosu ball would be good as well. And lateral bounding, you do get that elastic component of the Bosu ball.
You get more out. You actually go a lot further. With it. So I think it's almost like an overload in terms of how much distance you can cover.
Yeah, because it'd be hard to, like you say, use a band to accelerate lateral movements. So use Bosu ball, just an easy way to do it.
Yeah, cool. All right, next one.
Next one is the full Bosu ball, or the double Bosu ball, which is the Swiss / exercise ball.
I think this is underrated tool, majorly an underrated tool. I know it looks very novel. People do crunches on it, jackknives. They're kind of like the go-to. We love it here. The ones our Swiss balls are used all the time here, like literally every single session.
Mm-hmm.
It's for hamstring curls, for some sort of core work with some plank rollouts or something like that. Then we also use it for some speed work as well. We actually teach them to do like a Swiss ball falling start position, and we can use that as a feedback tool to get the athletes to feel like they're actually tipping forward rather than just trying to lean forward and shoot their knees back, so keeping their knees over their toes in that start position. So I think it's an excellent tool. I think it's completely underrated.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd have to say underrated as well, but I guess my only experience with it is being here, and like I said, we like to use it a lot here. So from my experience in terms of coaching and programming, it's a big part of what I do in terms of my own programming and whatnot. But I guess looking on the wider social media, Instagram and whatnot, it's not really something that's used, like we say, as much of a tool as it could be. So yeah, I guess I'll go underrated as well.
Yeah, I say definitely underrated. I think a lot of people abuse it as an ab exercise, but it's definitely very versatile as not only an ab tool to work the core in an unstable manner, but you can also use it for hamstrings, you can use it for quads, you can use it for neck rehab, like neck isometrics.
Oh yeah,
you can also do shoulder work with it. I think it's a very good underrated tool if you know how to use it in different ways.
And they're cheap, $20. You can go pretty much anywhere from.
Yeah.
Cool. Next one.
Push-ups.
I think overrated in terms of how they're applied in the general athletic development setting, but a very underrated tool. So what I mean by that in terms of overrated, people give it as more of just a fitness tool, just in terms of push-ups, as a penalty, or they're doing a conditioning set or something like that. Unfortunately, if you look around a 40 ground, they're doing their off-season and they're doing push-ups in between running sets or something like that. They just look like shit. To be honest, most of them look like shit.
Yep.
But as a strength tool, as a tool to actually develop upper body strength, I think it's an excellent exercise.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go. So push-ups. I'd say underrated. So, yeah, I think they're an easy way to, for I guess a beginner to work on the upper body strength. They're a good little goal for a kid to progress to. A lot of people, I think, see a lot of trainers online. They like to do the flashier, big, start using weights as soon as we can. But I think if you get a kid doing push-ups really well from an early age, there's just one of those basic foundational movements that I think is overlooked a lot of the times because you're trying to progress them a lot more. I don't know, kids don't like to do it because they want to touch the weights as soon as they can, but I think, as a developmental tool and strength tool, they're underrated. And then even when you get more advanced, there's an easy way to add volume to sessions if you're doing, push-ups, supersets in between upper body movements. Good way to do plyometrics, upper body plyometrics. Great tool to really build the explosive upper body power. If you're doing, clap push-ups, depth drop push-ups, whatever they might be, I think, they're a really underrated tool to build that explosive upper body strength.
Yeah, I think that push-ups are very underrated. I think, they are sort of touted as a bit of a litmus test for upper body strength, but I think push-ups are really good for teaching upper body strength and developing upper body strength and hypertrophy. But also, it's great to teach scapular-humeral mechanics as well, because we're getting, rather than just moving the humerus, we're actually getting the scaps to move as well, and that also helps with shoulder girdle strength and rotator cuff strength, so you can actually hold it in the labrum. It's a great way to teach someone intensity as well. So if I'm trying to take someone to an RPE 10, I can just say, just do as many push-ups as you can, and I just keep telling them to go and go and go until they literally can't push themselves off the ground. Okay, cool. That's an RPE 10. So we're going to work at about RPE 6 or 7 on this exercise. So it's a very safe way to apply intensity, and you can apply context from that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I like it.
What's the next one?
Barbell back squats at quarter depth. So quarter squatting.
Who wants to do this one?
You start,
look, I'll start because I'm the barbell back squat enthusiast. For athletes, the groundwork needs to be achieved first at full range of motion, and you need to own the range of motion. Once you can own the full range of motion in a barbell back squat, then starting to use a quarter squat for whatever reason, for if it's a speed strength or if it's an absolute strength at a specific range of motion, then a quarter squat can be applied. But I think the context of which it's used is important.
Yeah, so over or under?
If used for the right reasons, underrated.
Okay. I think it's overrated, mainly because a lot of people can run away with this really quickly and just, see people, overload whatever the 1RM may be by like 100 to like 120% of their 1RM back squat. And in terms of the risk and reward for something like that, I don't think it's really worth it at the end of the day. I think there are more appropriate exercises you could do, like overcoming ISOs in that specific joint position. I think you're going to get a lot more out of that specifically. I think it's more sport specific than just trying to do a very heavy quad back squat. And especially when you're seeing people through social media, you see the lumbopelvic area, it becomes a bit more compromised as a result as well. So in terms of like safely training people, I think there are better ways to do it. So I think it is overrated.
Yeah, I'd say overrated as well. Similar to, I guess, vein to Trent there. Like if you wanted to train that joint angle, if you've gone to do jumps with barbell on the back or weight in their hands, they're not going to squat down to full depth and then try to jump from that position anyway. So you're able to generate just as much force from that joint angle already without having to, like you say, dangerously overload that movement with excessive weight. So I reckon it's overrated. I probably wouldn't program it personally myself. I wouldn't see any reason to. I guess maybe in a strength sport context, obviously a bit different. You're working on specific sticking points you got to overcome, but in an athletic sense, I would never program it.
Yeah, so maybe if you're a listener and you see a coach programming it, maybe ask him why, and if they're like, I don't know why, just leave them.
Yeah, if they justify it, and they've got a reason, that's fine. Yeah. But
and I think a quarterback squat, it has to be later in their training age as well.
Mm-hmm.
So at least 5 years of experience, I believe they've got to have some decent time under the barbell and be able to back squat, full range, for a decent amount of weight before we start introducing very heavy loads that compromise the lumbar and the pelvic area.
Yeah, and you see all the people online, certain individuals who do program that a lot, they're working with athletes who are like professionals, they've been training for 10 plus years. So the amount of weight they have on their back looks really impressive, and like, okay, well, every kid wants to be able to move that much weight or move that explosively, but the reality is they took 10 years of proper training to get to that position, full range training, to then have that luxury of being able to work with higher intense weights in that limited range of motion. So it's just sort of a false narrative portrayed.
Yeah, there's a video of Elliot Kipchoge doing quarterback squats or quarter split squats in a power rack, but who knows how long he's been doing that for? Who knows how long he's been strength training for?
Yeah, and you see elite sprinters and whatnot do those sort of explosive quarter squat or high rack position movements.
But that's squats,
But that's on top of the extra training that they're doing already.
Yeah.
It's on top of full range power cleans or full range clean jerks, whatever it might be. They're already moving explosive weight in full range of motion.
Doing full range squats. Yeah.
That's just purely, acceleration work done at the start of their workouts, potentiation before everything else, or it's just part of an explosive series. It's not the bread and butter of their program there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Next one, box squats. Box jumps.
Box jumps.
Overrated in the sense that people don't do them well and they look ugly. Like there's always gym memes and fails and people stacking, eating shit, and all that jazz. But I think they're a excellent tool for athletes. But like I said, overrated in terms of the general fitness setting. But I think, and even in the athletic sense, kids just try and chase the pure height without understanding a bit of context behind the purpose of the box jump, just taking it out of the eccentric loading that comes from the landing. And basically we want them to have that hip displacement, not trying to just bring the legs up to their chest really quickly, which gives the illusion that they're jumping high, but when you actually look at it and slow it down, they're not really the hips aren't even leaving the ground, and that's what we really measure, is that hip displacement.
Yeah. I like it as a tool. So say, I don't know, when we get kids that are just starting out and you ask them to do a counter movement jump or whatnot, they're just trying to jump as high as they can. Using the box jump as the tool, or that they asking them to jump onto the box, they're going to jump as explosively as they can. I mean, we see kids here when we've gone from, I don't know, starting on tall drops to then counter movement jumps, and you ask them just to jump as high as they can, they're not, you can tell they're not going in nearly as explosively or as high as they can. They're just half-assing it. So if you ask them to get on the box and then try to get up higher on the box, it's just an easy tool to do that. So I'm going to say underrated in athletic sense. Yeah, I'm going to go underrated.
Yeah, I would say overrated, just because I think a lot of new S&C coaches think that it's a thing to do. Like, you have an athlete for the first time, oh yeah, I'm going to put box jumps in there. Don't know why I keep saying box squats. Box jumps, because athletics, an athletic movement to do. Whereas, yeah, like you guys says, it's very good as an athlete training tool, because it allows you to train jumps without the eccentric landing forces that could potentially become overuse injuries down the line. But also, drives a bit of competition as well. And the only reason, the bad thing I see about box jumps is that, it's just you're bringing up your legs way too high. Whereas what sport are you going to be lifting up your legs really, really high, unless there's like a 45-degree angle where you're going to take a mark in AFL or something like that, where you are going to be lifting your legs up reasonably high, but at the same time you're going to be doing box jumps at like straight shin angle, unless you're trying to train pure vertical displacement.
Yeah, I think the only, even then you wouldn't even do it, is like in NFL, college football, you see them hurdling other athletes. It's probably the only time you actually bring your leg up, but they actually practice the hurdle position when the front leg is straight and the back leg is actually bent. They don't actually try and tuck, because the idea is they want to keep running forward as they go through.
Yeah, I think it's good, like, from a beginner, like, it teaches them the sequencing you need to be able to jump high. I know it was one athlete we work with, Lucas.
Visual feedback.
Yeah, like Lucas we work with. I think if we got him doing hurdle jumps or something like that, there's just too many things to think about in terms of the landing, not falling over, getting over the hurdle, like we say. But then, using the box jump, it's a bit of a safer tool. If he fails, he just lands on a soft box. Like, it's not much is going to happen there. But he still gets the teaching tool in terms of how to properly sequence his arms, legs, use the momentum properly to be able to get up on the box. So I know for an athlete like that, it's a good tool we like to use. I've seen some success out of, because he's getting better movement quality out of it. But
cool. Next one is the aqua bag.
I have seen some Instagram accounts that use the aqua bag quite heavily. I think in terms of the sense of developing athletes specifically, I think it's overrated, but I definitely see it being a useful tool in the off season, especially if you want to try and if you're doing like isometric positions and you want some probations or something like that, you get them to hold on to the bag and shake the bag or something like that. So if they're holding a split squat or a lateral lunge for time or something like that, then you get like the micro movements and adjustments through the legs with the aqua bag when they're holding in different positions. Definitely seen that. That's a good tool to train those positions specifically, especially with sport. The way that it works is you're never in the ideal position all the time, so there's always going to be slight variations, and that's where the aqua bag kind of comes into play with that. But in terms of if it's for like strength, power, speed and all that, I don't know, I think I wouldn't use it in those settings.
Yeah, I reckon it's overrated. Even in, like, I don't know, we were talking about like the running mechanics and whatnot, using them in instability tools. It's more just a fun little tool, to use to get them into, I don't know, instead of doing farmers carries or suitcase carries, just easy way to, I guess, keep enjoyment there for a young kid who, farmers carries are pretty boring for a kid doing marches and whatnot, instability training. So it's a good tool in that sense. But I think for large majority of the population, they're overrated.
Yeah, from an athletic standpoint, I think you can't beat the fundamentals. You can't beat the basic core exercises and marching and offset base training, things like that, like single arm training, things like that. But I think as a tool, it's as an aqua bag tool, I think it's an underrated exercise or modality, because I don't think we fully know all the options we have available to it. So we only know a fair few. As I like it in terms of adding perturbations to things that people progress really well to. So things like overhead marches or rotations and things like that. It just adds a little bit extra perturbation. It adds a little bit more challenge to the movement. So I think it's an underrated exercise, but overrated if you put it too early in someone's program.
Yeah, you can use it as a conditioning tool as well. Like, you can do some chops with it in the split stance position, and just do between 10 and 12 reps as part of like a mini circuit that you're doing as well.
Yeah, it's just more an advanced thing.
Yeah, but I think the feedback system that you get from the aqua bag is going to be different from a dumbbell and a kettlebell as well, because you're going to feel the fluidity of the actual water, and you're going to be able to kind of work with the water. With the dumbbell, it's just like a solid mass, where you can it's actually easier to control in that sense. But with the aqua bag, because of the way it's shaped and the way it shifts and moves, there's a lot more variability within it.
Cool. Next one.
Next one is Smith machine.
Smith machine.
In an athletic sense, overrated completely. I can say okay, I'll say overrated in a general sense, but then I'll argue for why you can't use it. Like, overrated in the sense that, like, any sort of load, any squats, split squats, like, we want the athlete to feel unstable. We want their body to have to stabilize weight, be able to generate all the force and everything themselves. On the other side, upper body training, upper body explosive training, I think it's a very good tool to use. Obviously, explosive bench press, all those sort of movements that it's really hard to load when you're in the supine position, especially. You can do medicine ball, chest passes and whatnot, but yeah, it's just an easy tool. You can do that by yourself, because obviously it's on a track, so it's just straight up and down. So I'd say in a general sense I still stick to overrated, but yeah, definitely upper body training, it's a good tool to use there. We don't have one here, but it's a good tool.
I think it's completely underrated. As you mentioned before, like, I've used it in my own training for like bench throws. I did like a half kneel position, so like half kneel, like basically overhead throw in that position as well. Single arm bench throws as well. It's just such a unique piece of equipment, and the nice thing about it decelerates the weight on the way down, so it's all about just power and acceleration. And I think you definitely can overload it. It's because it has a high level of stability, so you could do, if you wanted to, like single leg RDLs and just load the shit out of it if you really wanted to. I've seen it used in the professional setting when they've done like switches as well. So they'll have like you got the bar across your back, you got like a pad, and basically you got your 1 foot above the pad, and you're doing like a quick switch. So it's teaching you to actually drive into the ground with that. And I think that's been used, and you can overload that quite safely as well. Whilst if you use like a safety bar, the bar can turn and all that jazz, but this is a really good way to overload the lower body with doing some fast switches in that sense. And as a hypertrophy tool, for athletes, I think it's really good, but I think you also got to make sure that you're trying to complement what you're doing with hypertrophy training. If you're trying to put on size for your sport, whether it's rugby or footy or something like that, dumbbells and barbells, they're still going to have that place as well.
Like Matt said, overrated from a general sense, because I see there's always going to be a Smith machine in any commercial gym you go to, and you always see young kids squatting absolute dog crap in a Smith machine. Or bench pressing in a Smith machine. So those young kids would be better off learning the barbell version or a dumbbell version, things like that. But I think, from a specialized athlete's standpoint, from power exercises to bench throws, lower body things like switches, and you can even do some sort of jumps with them. Could even potentially, it just takes out all the stability demands that you want to just focus on just producing power. You can even add accommodating resistance to it as well to change up the performance profiles. I think it's underrated as an athletic tool. I think all your points are very valid.
And you do ISOs as well. So whether it's like a mid thigh pull, overcoming split squat position, overcoming where it's like a quarter squat position as well. You know, it has its utility. It really does, and it's great as a potentiation tool, or if you want to come in, you know, as a pre-training or something like that, and just, you know, overload without taxing your nervous system. Great tool.
Next one, hip thrusts.
I'm in two spaces about this one. I think it's good as a general prep tool. So I think it's underrated in that sense, but in terms of like more specific athletic population, it's safe for like as a peaking tool or something like that. Well, yeah, I wouldn't particularly program it, so I think it's overrated in that sense. But I do see why people do it, because it's a hip hinge movement specifically. So say, for example, you know, you're an athlete, you got a lower back issue or something like that, then it's a great tool. Then it's properly rated in that sense.
Yeah.
I know some of our girls coming back from knee and hip issue, a knee and lower back, that will actually program specifically, and they feel fine on it, and they can go relatively heavy as well. But if we're trying to develop athletes, you know, peaking or something like that, I probably would use something else as a hip hinge.
Yeah. Similar to Trent. Yeah, I know I program it a lot for, like, say, athletes who are coming back from injuries, or some that struggle to feel the glutes in other movements. It's, I guess, a tool you can use to get them to feel what your glutes are supposed to feel like when they're contracting, and used in hip extension. But I think overrated in the sense of seen as like it's the glory or the
king
of all glute movements or whatnot, when there are other options, especially, like, say, for athletes that are a bit more applicable to the sport. But in a general training sense, like if you just want to build your glutes, or you're looking to increase your lower body strength, they're a good accessory or supplementary movement to squat, deadlifts, and other movements like that. But in an athletic sense, I reckon, they're overrated in that sense.
General sense, overrated, but I think it should be one of those staples in any athlete's program, because it's one of those pillars, but it's not the house. So it's the pillars that would make up any successful athlete. Like if you are a running based athlete, jump based athlete, anything like that, I think it's important to have strong glutes, because everything starts from the hips. As an exercise, hip thrusts, I think it's like, where else are you going to train that sort of hip extension? Because you've got RDLs and you've got deadlifts and things like that, but that's a different plane of forces, all top to bottom, whereas in a hip thrust you're horizontal, so you can train in that plane.
Yeah,
train the muscle, but it's not really specific to a sport.
No, it really isn't. And if you look at a lot of sports, the knee joint is actually involved as well. So even though, yes, it is a horizontal displacement because your hips are throwing forward, all you're really doing in hip thrust is really just kind of throwing your hips forward. If you look at a lot of sports, it's in conjunction with the knees as well. So you actually want to be actually having the knees more involved compared to the hip thrust. The hip thrust is just a hip hinge in pretty much in isolation. When you look at sprinting, people use it for like sprinting and takeoff and like broad jumps in that sense. But even then, I would still argue the trap bar is better, because all you have to do, if you got a model or you do a drawing of a trap bar, someone doing a trap bar, and you just tilt it, so as if they're jumping forward, it literally looks like they're taking off.
Yeah.
So for me, it makes more sense to train the trap bar deadlift.
Yeah.
Or something similar to that, or some sort of like rack pull or hang power clean or something like that instead, if we're going to do that specifically. But I'm not knocking it. Yeah. But I just say I wouldn't have it later on if we're trying to get athletes to peak.
Yeah, I'll probably make sure hip thrusts are combined with some sort of RDL or hip hinge, so you can combine both. That's two different styles of hip extension.
I think that makes more sense.
Yeah. Cool. Next one.
From me.
Fat grips.
Fat grips.
I don't really have too much.
I'll go first.
On this one.
Fat grips, I think for me, they first came into like a bodybuilding kind of sense. Like they were sort of touted. I don't know who brought them out, but they were sort of touted as a increase your bicep activations and improves your forearm grip recruitment. So improve your muscle growth and things like that. So I think from an athlete standpoint, is it really gonna improve your athleticism? Probably not. Maybe if you get your biceps bigger and you feel more confident and you can pull more dingers outside on the field, then you go for your life. If that's going to improve your athleticism. But I think if you've got someone going like, oh, this is the absolute best thing in the world, it's going to improve your sprint speed by 100%, I'd be like, no way. So I think overrated if someone's trying to market it like that.
Yeah, I'll just say overrated. I don't really use them myself or program them myself. If we've got someone who's injured, they're a good tool to use. So you don't have to grip. You got elbow pain or forearm pain, whatever it might be. You don't have to grip. I don't know. You're doing push-ups or whatnot. A good tool to use in that sense. But like you say, in a athletic stance, they're not really a tool that I would use. Maybe, like I said, in a combat sport or something like that, where grip strength is a determining factor, or mountain climbing or rock climbing, bouldering, something like that. Maybe in that sense, but I think there are better grip strength and forearm training tools than the fat grips. Trent's a bit different.
Yeah, I've got a different point of view. I'm going to say underrated. And I say really underrated. Mm-hmm. Part of the sense is a lot of the sports that we have, they're like a stick and ball or like a bat and ball kind of thing.
Mountain bike riding. Good grip.
Yeah, mountain bike riding.
BMX.
B1. But I think if you look at, because obviously with Jordan plays tennis, right? He actually said we introduced some, fat grip, chest supported rows into his program, and as a result, he actually feels like he's striking the ball more pure by just being able to develop his forearm strengths over an 8-week period. So I think there's definitely some validity to introducing fat grips into training. It's more for the pulling exercises, less for pushing. I think pushing is kind of more for those with like elbow pain, as you guys have discussed.
I've used it to replace smaller grip diameters. So by introducing a wider grip diameter, it's actually taking less stress off the wrist.
Less stress off the wrist and also the elbow joint as well. I think it's a really good tool. But in terms of pulling strength, I know I want to start introducing it to some other athletes as well, because if you've got the racket or a hockey stick or baseball bat or whatever it may be, the only connection you have is your hands, right? So for me, it makes the most sense in order to try and improve their grip, which is going to improve their control of the implement that they're using as well. Mm-hmm. And a lot of sports where athletes can fatigue first, and this is a Charles Poliquin thing, is actually in forearm strength. Yeah. So if they say, for example, they have like a sporting performance, a day before, and you test that forearm strength, and you test it 3 days after, you know if they're, from a neural perspective, their forearms are actually going to fatigue. Will be the first thing to fatigue first, and usually the forearm strength will start to increase about 48 to 72 hours after the performance as well.
Yeah.
Same thing with vertical jump. So in that sense, I would actually train them to actually strengthen the forearms, because we know it's going to reduce, and especially for those who have like 2 to 5 day tournaments or competitions or something like that, that's where it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. If they've got a very long sporting period and they're going to be neurally taxed from that period of competition for whatever reason, might be because of the weather as well, maybe they've just had long sets or just really tough competitions, or the dietary requirements are a bit off, so they're going to be a lot more cooked. So implementing some forearm strength work in the pulling sense, so whether it's like single arm rows, chest supported rows, one dumbbell row, it doesn't matter what it really is at the end of the day, it can really help with their forearm strength endurance aspect over those days.
Yeah, and I guess even like in a footy or basketball sense, like you see a lot of the I guess bigger athletes or high-end athletes working on the hand strength as a tool. So I guess if you can kill 2 birds with one stone and use a fat grip in that sense, help with marking, catching basketball, have better hand control when you're dribbling and whatnot.
Great. And also contact sports as well, like the ability to wrestle, maintain contact. You always want to make sure that you got strong forearms in the grappling sense. I know. When I was playing rugby league as well, that's something we all focused on, was the forearm strength, especially with the grappling side.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, sweet. Next one, we have long steady state running / jogging.
I love it. I'm going. I think in a general sense, it's a bit overrated, but I like it and I love it. So yeah, in an athletics population, so say you got, I don't know, whatever sport it might be, field, court, team sport, individual sport, I think it's a great tool. Obviously further away from competitions. I'm not saying to in the middle of your season or peaking time to be just running for hours on end, but I mean, start of your pre-season, same way we do here, you start very general. I think it's a good tool to build aerobic endurance. It's easy if you're doing zone 2, zone 3 running, so really easy, very talkative pace, so you could have a conversation when you're running with a friend. It's a good tool to keep, I guess, your team together. You can do it running with a few friends. I'm going to go with underrated.
Probably rated.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say like it's underrated, but I can understand why it's overrated. I'd say underrated because like it's just one of those things where if you're a field-based athlete who's playing a game for a long period of time and if you don't have a great aerobic base, this is where you start with. This is some easy long distance runs to get your aerobic base up. I've done it and I felt quite fit after doing it after a couple of months, and I think it's definitely transferred well to my sports because I can endure during a game. But at the same time, I can understand why it's overrated because you can't just train this energy system alone. You need to continue to train other energy systems through different intensities, so that because AFL isn't going to be the same intensity, NRL is going to be the same intensity, basketball is going to be the same intensity. So it's important to train this along with other intensities of exercise.
Overrated. Yeah, the guys knew what was coming. Part of my reasoning behind it is majority of people don't do it well. I think it's just kind of like, as Matt alluded before, it's kind of like a slapstick approach. Just get out and run just for the time and you feel better. In terms of the athletic population, people love doing it for fun, enjoyable. I think it got popularized in the 50s, I think. They called it not running, jogging. And then just kind of like, blew up from there. And obviously we have like marathons and, fun runs and all that jazz in Australia. In the athletic sense, I think there are more efficient ways because when you are training in your sport, right, no matter what sport it is, you are running in general. So you're still developing your aerobic base no matter what in the drills that you're doing specifically. I remember some of the footy teams that I've worked with in the past, they would always ask me, so, when we're doing like the long distance running, I would say no completely, like we're not doing it. Like I wouldn't say no, but I would be like, oh yeah, we'll do it later on. And like never did. The reason why is because there was other systems I put in place that was less burdensome on their joints, but that was able to overload their cardiorespiratory system so much more effectively compared to just like running laps for the sake of running laps. Because running is effectively an efficient way, so therefore your heart rate doesn't really go up as much as you would want it to. But if I was going to train the cardiovascular system, I've done various ways. One of the ways is do like a locomotive circuit. So it's like 10 cones marked out in like a grid. Every 10 meters you do some sort of like movement and locomotive movement. So it could be like a side shuffle, back pedal, skip, reverse skip, carioca, whatever it may be, right, in any order. And if you do that for 10 minutes, right, your heart rate's going to be sitting between 140 and 160 the whole time. And you're going to have periods of high, periods of low throughout the whole time. And the one thing I found is they don't have the same soreness from doing something like that compared to just running straight the whole time.
Become a better athlete because of it as well.
Yeah, and because we're using movements a bit more spread out and then utilised within the sport itself instead of just running, we're ticking another box right there. They're not pulling up a sore, which is really good. Then we just basically do like, I think we just did 2 sets of 10 minutes with like a 3-minute rest in between. So it's very aerobic in that nature. And if they had to slow down, they had to slow down. But each week they would actually get better and better. The other way I've done that is with rugby strength coach's conditioning program. His running program is actually really good. I recommend checking that out. His name's Kia. I can't remember his surname.
Kia went in flat.
Yeah. Rugby strength coach. His conditioning program that I worked with a rugby team. I did it for 4 weeks with them. They ran it twice a week. They had some real big heavy dudes that really struggled conditioning wise, by the end of where the first 3 times they couldn't even complete it properly, by the end of it they were actually completing it properly in 4 weeks time. So it was a real quick way to actually bring up their fitness without the overloading through their joints or their ankles or whatever it may be. It would teach them how to breathe better as well, because they had tape across their mouth. Some of them were like, well, this has got to be a gimmick, right? And I'm like, no, you're doing it. And it's like, you're going to get fitter. It's like, just give me three more weeks. And
Trust
like,
the process.
Trust the process. And they all got fitter. They all felt better. They were recovering better during as the weeks went on, during the sessions. And yeah, it was just a great tool to use, and I still use it to this day, and it's just easy. I use it for multiple sports, and I just vary it up based on the actual sports we're working with, depending on how many Ks they have to cover.
Yeah, it's a scary sight seeing Trent on an exercise bike with tape across his mouth.
Seems like Deadpool. Yeah, no, that, or if I'm got a weight vest and I'm walking with tape across my mouth.
It's would not want to see him on the beach wearing a vest.
David Goggins-esque.
Yeah, I did that during the lockdowns.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be staying away from that guy.
Yeah, so no, it's a interesting point. It's kind of like a roundabout way of doing long, steady state cardio, but the same outcome.
Yeah, because
better.
You also have to factor in the training load as well from practice. Yeah, and that's what a lot of coaches don't take that into consideration. It's like, we just want to get them fitter, but what else are they doing in their training sessions? Because the coach might be cooking them and you don't even know.
Yeah.
But this system would actually help to enhance their ability to get through the coach's sessions or whatever the coach has planned.
And I've seen you do like cardio circuits here with Jordan as well. Get 2 minutes on the bike, do 4 or 5 easy body weight maybe
power,
a little bit little weight movements, and then do 5 or 6 rounds of that. And there's already, I don't know, what's that, 12-14 minutes on the bike plus all the other movements there. So
do it for like 30-35 minutes. I say you can go till you feel a little bit cooked, and that's the end of the session. And he's out. And then sometimes he's been able to do 5, sometimes he's been able to do 9 rounds. Each round goes for about 5 or 6 minutes. So it's a great way to work on his work capacity without the joints overloading the joints and being overburdensome and pulling up sore. And every time he does a hard conditioning set at training, everyone else is blowing, and he's just like, okay, what's next? It's good for him.
Cool. Next one, leg swings.
Suck ass, absolutely suck.
Say it again.
They're completely overrated. And I think Dave just put a post up recently, but it might be a couple of weeks after till you see this podcast. I'll listen to it. I gave my justification for it. Basically, all I said was you're losing. You're not actually keeping your leg under tension the whole time. And the other part is you're going past your passive range of motion as well. Therefore, you're going to start actually overloading the actual joint capsule within the hips, and so you're going to get some ligament laxity as well. So the idea is you actually want to keep the body and the system under tension, under load, because that's how you're going to be able to express movement, essentially, be able to apply force into the ground to move it. You can't be just like a wet noodle, and the noodle just literally just flops to the ground and does nothing.
I'll go overrated. I haven't thought about it that deeply. I can't give you a full scientific explanation why leg swings aren't great.
Anecdotal experience.
But hammy scoops, hammy sweeps are better. That's all I'm going to say. They feel better. Nice ease way into it. Like you say, there's no rude, abrupt tension caused at the top of the swing compared to a hammy scoop or a hammy sweep, whatever you want to call it. You can just ease into it as you step through it. But yeah, I'm going to say overrated in that sense. I don't have a lengthy explanation for you. Yeah,
when you say you're going to need to take the leg to tension, what do you mean by that, the listeners?
So people just kind of like swing it around, like it's like flopping around. It's like a pendulum essentially. So as you swing your leg back, your glute should be causing the drive, right? Then as your leg swings forward, it should be your hip flexors causing the drive.
Yeah.
But the problem is though, when you swing your leg forward, right, when people more like actually throw, you see the torso just kind of throw themselves, throw the foot forward. So therefore, they're actually yes, they are technically stretching the hamstrings in this case. But I beg to differ that you're actually just creating more laxity within the actual joint as well, going beyond what the joint's capacity actually is.
Yeah.
What it should be and where it actually goes within the actual sport.
Yep.
I'll say overrated as well, but I've done leg swings. I feel a bit better after doing it, but yeah, I think as a practical warm up, it's probably not the best. But you know, I think if you've got tight hammies and you've got tight hip flexors, the good thing about it as well is it's reciprocal anterior and posterior pelvic tilt with the leg swing as well. So I think it's adding a little bit of movement there, but it shouldn't be wholly relied upon to stretch out the legs and legs in general.
If you are going to do it, just keep it under tension. There are ways that you can actually do it. It actually looks like a running. You're actually running, but you can also do it, obviously, leg swing side to side, and it looks a lot more deliberate. It looks a lot more
and you feel stronger afterwards.
Yeah, it's almost like you're neurally priming the system as well. So you might as well go through a full active range of motion and neurally prime yourself for you to actually move explosively. Well, that makes the most sense to me.
The higher you can swing your leg, the better athlete you are. Fact. It's a joke.
The more flexible
if that was the case, jeez.
Cool. And we're going to our last one. So our last underrated, overrated is fitness/activity trackers.
I like them. I love them. So I'm going to say, I don't know. In a general sense, I think they're like properly rated, but I think athletes don't use them as well as they could. I know we like to talk about in the past podcast we talked about goals and process goals. I think for an athlete, say if they're already using a Garmin or Apple Watch, whatever they have, I think it's an easy tool for them to use to be able to track their own sessions, sprint sessions, swim sessions, bike, whatever it might be, using like app like Strava, or I'm not sure what Apple has, but I like to use Strava because you can log all sorts of sessions on there. They don't have to, like, I don't know, say it, instead of writing down their sprint session, whatever they've done, it's all on the app there for you. You don't have to think anything. Just click start, click stop, uploads it for you. You can add comments personally for yourself to see, you can rate out of 10 how you felt, what worked, what didn't work. I think it's a really good tool for athletes to use that takes pretty much all the hassle of having to write down goals in a diary beforehand. It's all tracked electronically, gets rid of paper, gets rid of all these hurdles that the athletes can use as excuses to not tracking things properly, and also tracks it over time, see how you've improved, how you haven't improved, has weekly mileage, kilometers, has intensity, has I'm not sure how good the heart rate and all that stuff is, but it does track it there for you as well. So I think in an athletic sense it's an underrated tool that can be used a bit more.
I don't know which way to go because I personally don't use them. I have used them in the past. I've used quite a few of them. I like it in the sense, I might actually come to my answer in a second actually. I might talk myself into one of them. It helps to gamify, I guess, tracking or your fitness or anything like that. Now, if you don't know what gamify means, it basically means it makes it a bit more enjoyable, the process, and it kind of gives you like achievements along the way. You reach a certain milestone, say you reach 10,000 steps for general fitness, or you get a your heart rate variability drops or something like that, or the heart rate variability increases or something like that. So it means you're more prepared to actually train. If it drops, then it means you should back off from training. But I think the catch-22 of it is we can rely too much on the data itself in order to drive these decisions, because we're quite a dynamic organism, I should say. There's a lot of factors that go into it. I definitely see the value of it as well, but I'll say it's overrated. I think I always will go back to just writing things down, going back to the basics, get the 7 to 9 hours sleep, to tracking your food, even just writing down what you did for your session or something like that as a tool first before we go deeper into the data side. Some people love tracking data. They're just all about spreadsheets. We've got members here that love spreadsheets. They froth over it. But for me, I'd rather track what they've done, see what they've done over 7 days, and make adjustments from there, in that sense.
Yeah, I would say underrated because they're a very practical tool for doing what they are. They're fitness and activity trackers. So for someone who's a very highly, if someone's an amateur athlete and they've got a highly active job and they come from the gym and you've got them doing jumps and things like that, but you've looked at their watch and they say they've done 20,000 steps, you might take that into consideration for that session on that day. So I think it's great as a auto regulation tool, but also as a tracker. Like if you're an S&C coach and your athlete's like, hey, can I go for a run after this, or can I go for a run tomorrow? And you're like, yeah, they probably could go for a run. You might just give them a parameter and say, okay, I want you to run between this and this, or I don't want you to run over this heart rate, or I want you to run this kilometers. Then they can use their tracker without you micromanaging them, and they can do what they want to do. Great for heart rate training. So like Matt said, we don't really know how accurate they are, but if you're using the same device every single time, then there's going to be some element of homogeneity.
I think it's just
Standardization. Yeah. So you can standardize the heart rate to say, okay, like I've gone a bit higher than normal, or I'm a little bit lower than normal, and you can work within a range where you want to work within. And if you're running, you can track pacing as well, rather than if you're running around an athletics track, you can't really track pacing unless you've got all the markers marked out and you've got a stopwatch. Whereas, you've got
the watch there tells you real time how fast you're going in that
the
second.
pace, heart rate at certain times and all that jazz. Whether there's spikes in your heart rate and all that. I get it, but it all depends in this case in terms of, the devil's in the detail.
Yeah, I like the social side, and like I said, gamify things. So say an app like Strava, which I like to use for running and tracking everything else. Like it's almost like the Facebook, the Instagram of the running sort of thing. Your post gets put up, or the run gets put up there. Your friends can comment, like whatever. They can see what you've done.
Track routes.
Track routes. Do course records. Someone just beat my course record on the run. I'm going to go back over the pre-season and beat that. So I think in that sense, it's good to get you engaged and like you say, it's a bit more fun into it. It's hard for someone to go out for a run 3 days a week every morning. No one cares. No one's giving you any kudos or good job or whatnot. But the little post on there, or seeing your friends do a run and you were to do them with them. And also in the coaching side, I know I use them with Jane. Going back into it, I follow her on Strava and see how her runs go. It's an easier way for me to see. I can just see it in real time, see it on the app, rather than me having to ask her. She goes, oh, this felt good, this didn't feel good, or her good sometimes from Monday to Wednesday in reality was maybe Wednesday felt worse but run was better, or vice versa and whatnot. It's just a objective tool. I can see how fast you run, how far the environment she was running on, everything like that. So I like it.
Cool. Any final thoughts on this?
No, just good to see we've got some different opinions, but
like if you have an opinion, just make sure you have a decent justification. I think there's no right or wrong, and if it works for you, it works for you. Just because someone said it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. If it works for you, it works for you, but make sure you have a justification, understanding why it works for you.
Yeah, like I said before, the devil's in the detail. Understand what the actual outcomes you're trying to strive towards, and that actually make sure you have the appropriate tools to actually achieve what you specifically want to achieve, and make sure you're addressing what needs to be achieved as well. And that's what it pretty much comes down to. Yes, we know we knocked quite a few of them, but there are applications when they're going to be beneficial, and there's also times when they're overused in terms of whether on social media or whether it's new fad exercise or something like that. Usually you just go back to the basics and you build up from there.
Yeah,
cool.
Easy.
Cool. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, leave a comment below and hit the like. We're going to keep rolling with the content. This is a big one, and we'll probably break this up into mini ones and we'll see how we go.
Yep, share with your mum, share with your friends, share with your coach, share with your rival, share with everyone you know.
Yeah, share the leg swings.
Yeah, if you see someone doing leg swings, share with them. And cool. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe.
Easy.
Thanks, boys.
Cheers.
You have just listened to the Inner Athlete podcast. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with the release of weekly episodes. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to get great tips on all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring.